know you're running out of funding. Why don't you bring your whole operation to us? We're now getting cherry-picked by other countries. Yeah, that's what we kind of did for the second half of the 20th century. But now the tables are reversed.
大家好，今天要分享的是知名天体物理学家尼尔·德格拉斯泰森的一段演讲节选。在这段演讲里，他直击全球科研人才流动的巨大反转，剖析美国基础科研持续衰退的深层危机，重点讲到三代中国留学生的变迁，清晰道出中美科研力量此消彼长的现实，同时警示削减基础科研投入会直接损害国家健康、经济与国家安全。尼尔·德格拉斯·泰森本身深耕天体物理领域数十年，拥有顶尖学术视野，常年面向大众科普前沿科学，主持科普节目《星际谈话》。上世纪80年代，他攻读天体物理博士时，亲眼见证美国吸纳全球各国理科留学生，大批海外人才学成后留美发展，给各国本土造成严重人才流失。而如今局势彻底逆转，欧洲多国高薪挖走美国完整科研团队，中国更是走出了一套完整自主的科研人才培养路线。他结合核磁共振、量子物理、希拉毒蜥药物等多个颠覆性科研案例，证明短期看不到收益的基础研究才是所有创新的根基。同时梳理美国历史上斯普特尼克危机、珍珠港事件2次举国发力科研快速翻盘的过往，点明美国如今正在慢慢丧失维持科技领先的核心优势。作为深耕科研一线的学者，他没有片面鼓吹单一国家，而是客观冷静地拆解人才、经费、基础科学三者对国家竞争力的决定性作用。下面我们先来看看这段演讲中最贴合当下全球人才格局的核心片段。
When I was in graduate school many moons ago, back in the 1980s, I was in graduate school to get a PhD in astrophysics. And when you're getting an advanced degree in the sciences, especially in the physical sciences, what you notice is that other graduate students, many of them, and in some departments, most of them, were not born in America. They came from other countries around the world. These are countries whose system of education did not extend deeply into graduate studies in the fields of their interest. And so they had to look around the world to see who could serve those interests. And in the physical sciences, the United States had led the world. Half of my fellow graduate students were foreign-born nationals. And this was not uncommon. In the physics department, it was even higher, that fraction of foreign-born nationals. And for most of them, they'd get their graduate degree and they would find job opportunities here in the United States and they would stay. Now, I took that for granted. It was like, well, of course they're coming to the United States. This is America. And I didn't fully think about what might be the consequences to the country from which they came. This was tantamount to a brain drain from those countries. And those countries would not then be able to create a layer of science, technology, engineering, and math to build their infrastructure. They'd be beholden to advances from other countries that had the innovation and the educational tracking to create that kind of a world. Recently, in the United States, science as an enterprise has not been as welcomed or as supported as it has been in previous decades. This manifests in multiple ways. We've already talked about the halving of the science budget of NASA. By the way, that might not look like much on the total NASA budget, because NASA puts astronauts into space and lately to the moon and back. That's not the science budget. The science budget is a fraction on top of that that allows us to put up space telescopes to search for life on Mars and on moons of Jupiter. It's all the images we get and the knowledge gleaned from the space telescopes, such as Hubble, such as the James Webb. That's the science budget. You might have read recently that research into the venom of the Gila monster, this big lizard, research on that venom led to the development of the GLP-1 weight loss medications. Who would have thought that? Maybe not even the scientists themselves. The point is, Curiosity-driven research extends the frontier in all directions, and you don't know in advance what connections will be made off of those frontiers. You don't know. My college physics professor, his name is Ed Purcell. I took quantum physics from him. This was well after he had earned a Nobel Prize. For what? For discovering a new physics phenomenon called nuclear magnetic resonance. This is what happens when you take the nucleus of an atom, subject it to a strong magnetic field, and you watch the effect on electromagnetic energy passing by it. Later on, medical technologists say, wait a minute, if you can distinguish one atomic nucleus from another in this way, then maybe I can make images of the soft tissue of the human body in ways that X-rays do not reveal. Thus was invented the magnetic resonance imager, the MRI. Its full name would really be the nuclear magnetic resonance imager, but nuclear is one of the two N words you're not supposed to use in polite company. Anyhow, MRI, arguably the most potent machine in the arsenal of the medical community to diagnose the condition of your body without cutting you open first. That came from the work of a physicist doing research on atoms and molecules, who, by the way, was deeply interested in atoms and molecules in space. That was his calling. That's what got him interested. And here he is doing research, a person who has no interest in medicine. The intersections of the frontier, of the moving frontier, in ways you cannot predict, is what defines our exponential growth in our science and technology that drives society. Within the last 2 years, we've lost more than 15,000 scientists from the ranks of the federal government. Not only that, grant money from major funding agencies of the government has been reduced so that we have fewer scientists doing research on government funding. You look at the titles of some of the papers or the titles of the grant proposals. They have a research paper that maybe 100 people in the world at most understand the title. And it's like, I don't see why that's relevant to anything. Therefore, I don't want to fund it. Let's cut it. And then you cut it and it looks like you're saving money when what you're doing is you're cutting out at the kneecaps the future competitiveness of this nation in the three things that we care most about: our health, our wealth, and our security. Because the history of that exercise tells us exactly that. The government loses 15,000 scientists, and if you think all the science research you need to do is on the R&D ledger of a corporation, you are sadly mistaken. So what is happening? Our labs here in the United States, the funding is dropping. We can't sustain the lab. We can't sustain graduate students, postdocs. What's a postdoc? A person who gets a PhD and still has some energy and some creativity to do some research. They don't want to be a professor yet, so they get to spend 3 years, 4 years, 6 years doing just research in a lab. You don't have money for that as the person who runs the lab evaporates. Do you realize I have colleagues who've gotten a phone call from Germany, from France, from Spain, saying, we've got a fully funded lab here. I know your expertise and I know you're running out of funding. Why don't you bring your whole operation to us? We're now getting cherry picked by other countries. Yeah, that's what we kind of did for the second half of the 20th century. But now the tables are reversed. China. Here's an interesting vignette about China. Initially, Chinese students came to the United States to study graduate subjects in the physical sciences, and they stayed. Meanwhile, China is growing. China's economy is growing. They're getting their act together. Have you seen pictures of Shanghai lately? Any part of it? This is a city of the future, right? So meanwhile, China's ascending. So what happens? The next generation of Chinese graduate students, because that first generation came and stayed. The second generation got trained and went back to China to build the next generation of graduate programs. The third generation of Chinese graduate students are not here because they're being trained in China and they're staying in China. This is a slide. It's not a cliff. If you fell off a cliff or were pushed off a cliff, you would notice that, but it's a slide. And as we continue down this slide, and as scientists are cherry-picked, as labs are evaporating, as scientists are retiring and not replaced, there's an intellectual vacuum, scientific vacuum that is descending upon the United States. And that has consequences. I'm not here to tell people who to vote for or what to vote for or who your candidate is. It has nothing to do with this. It has to do with an if-then statement. If you're okay with the United States losing its scientific leadership, especially in the physical sciences, if you're okay with that, you will get the country you voted for. And that country is one where we will no longer innovate because our greatest innovations are based on the frontier science that's way beneath them, hidden from the daily news reports, hidden from what you see and hear about as you surf the internet. That goes away. We lose the foundation of our innovations, and the United States fades on the world stage. And they will do things that will impress us, just as we did things my entire life growing up that impressed the world. We went to the moon. Nobody else was close to going to the moon. As a scientist, it kind of doesn't matter who's making the advances because the fields of science move forward. What happened on October 4th, 1957? Soviet Union launched Sputnik, a radio transmitter embedded in a hollowed-out intercontinental ballistic missile shell that was flying over our heads. If they could put that over our heads, they could put a nuclear payload over our heads. We got spooked. Within a year, we created NASA. Within 11 years, we orbited the moon. Within 12 years, we were walking on the moon. Yeah, we rocketed out of that hole we were in to try to show the world the path of freedom over then known as the path of tyranny, the godless communists. Oh, you want another example? December 7th, 1941, we're attacked at Pearl Harbor. Oh my gosh. We gather our resources, our scientists, our corporate infrastructures, our military. Do you realize we isolated the element plutonium in the year 1940? And within 5 years, it was weaponized. And that was the first atomic bomb ever detonated at Trinity Site, New Mexico. Shortly after that, a duplicate was made, perfected, and dropped in warfare. All that happened within 4 or 5 years. Think today how long construction projects take. You build a road, a bridge, or they take 5, 6, 7, sometimes 10 years. When we're motivated, evidence shows we can rise up as a nation, as one nation, to achieve a goal, provided we understand what that goal is, and we understand what methods, tools, tactics, efforts, and investments are required to stoke that goal. That's the America I look forward to. Neil deGrasse Tyson for Star Talk. This is a What's Up With That? Until next time, keep looking up.
看完这期视频，说实话，最让我感慨的不是 NASA 预算缩减、联邦科学家流失这些表层数据，而是尼尔·德格拉斯·泰森抛出的核心问题：人才流动的风向为什么短短几十年完全颠倒？早在上世纪80、90年代，物理、天文、化学等硬核理科领域，全球顶尖学生的首选深造地都是美国。大批中国学子远赴海外读博，毕业后选择留在美国实验室高效深耕，这也是当时美国能持续领跑全球科研的关键底气。可短短几十年，这条人才流向彻底调转。演讲里清晰划分的3代留学生轨迹，完全贴合我们能亲眼看到的现实。第一代赴美定居，第二代学成归国搭建本土科研体系，第三代直接在国内完成硕博培养，不再远赴美国。很多人会觉得只是留学生选择变了而已，影响不大。但这位天体物理学家直接点破了背后隐藏的巨大差距。美国当下正在持续削减基础科研经费，大量政府科研轮岗岗位取消，实验室缺少资金，养不起研究生与博士后得法。西班牙等欧洲国家主动抛出全额资助，挖走美国成熟科研团队。另一边，国内持续完善科研平台，加大基础学科投入，本土科研体系稳步成型，自然留住了本土青年科研人才。这里必须区分一个很多人容易混淆的点： 企业研发和国家基础科学完全是两回事。企业研发紧盯季度营收，只愿意投入短期内能变现的技术，而真正颠覆社会的创新，全部来自没有及时收益的好奇心驱动研究。就像演讲里举的2个经典例子，研究太空原子的核磁共振，最后诞生了医疗刚需设备 MRI。原本只是探索蜥蜴毒液的冷门研究，演化出如今爆火的减重药物。还有奠定现代数码电子产业的量子物理，诞生之初，没有任何人能预判它几十年后的产业价值。一旦基础科研断档，未来所有技术创新都会变成无源之水。美国如今最大的困境，就是不少决策者觉得冷门基础研究没有价值，随意砍掉科研拨款，看似短期省下财政开支，实则在透支未来几十年的健康、财富与国家安全。反观我们，很早就看清了基础学科本土科研人才梯队的长远价值，持续加码理工科教育、高校科研项目、国家级实验室建设，一步步搭建起完整自主的科研培养链条。这也是第3代中国研究生愿意留在国内的根本原因。还有一个很有意思的对比，演讲里提到美国历史上2次绝境翻盘的经历。当年苏联发射斯普特尼克卫星，美国举国发力，12年实现载人登月，珍珠港事件后短短5年完成纪元素武器化。这足以证明，只要认清科研的重要性，美国具备极强的动员能力。但现在的问题在于，当下美国内部对基础科学的价值认知严重割裂，科研持续萎缩，形成缓慢下沉的智力真空。这种下滑不是断崖式崩塌，而是温水煮青蛙，等到完全察觉危机时，追赶成本会成倍增加。有一点必须客观看待尼尔·德格拉斯，泰森本身是美国人，他的担忧并非刻意抬高他国，而是站在全球科研从业者的角度，惋惜本国来之不易的科技领先地位正在流失。科学本身不分国界，前沿发现遵循客观自然规律，但支撑科研持续前进的人才、资金、政策体系却牢牢绑定每个国家的长期发展。这段演讲也给我们普通人一个重要启发，不要只盯着短期能赚钱的技术应用，基础数理化、天文、生物这些看似冷门的学科，才是一个国家长久发展的压舱石，持续培育本土青年科研力量，完善自主科研体系，才是长久保持竞争力的核心路径。好了，这期视频到这里就接近尾声了。如果你看完有所收获，欢迎点赞、收藏、订阅本频道。后续我会持续带来更多海外学者客观分析全球科技人才格局的深度内容。大家有什么不同的看法，欢迎在评论区友好交流。每条留言我都会认真查看。我们下期再见。